The Garblin's been swinging a hot bat of late, 7 for his last 15. Here's the 2-1. Deep to left. That ball is gone. The crowd loves it. I've never heard this much generic Goblin noise.
Hey gang, using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Hey gang, looking to get your hands on a free box of Theros Beyond Death? Well, look no further. Flipside Gaming will be giving one away between December 12th and January 27th. You can enter by using my promo code MTGMudsta on an order of $10 or more, or by sending a self-addressed, stamped envelope or postcard to them. It's one entry per person, and for more information, follow the link below. We've got another merry melee headed your way, because you know what's better than 3 games a week? 4. In today's game, I'm playing Trostani, keeping Rishkar's Expertise, Secluded Steppe, Scattered Groves, Tranquil Thicket, Forest, Swords to Plowshares, and Return to Dust. New to the channel is Chris playing Jodah, keeping a Reflecting Pool, a Windswept Heath, a Stomping Ground, a Mox Diamond, Enter the Infinite, Runescarred Demon, and Expropriate. Ariel is also new, playing Seton, and he keeps a Forest, a Deserted Temple, a Woodland Bellower, a Heartwood Storyteller, Thorn of Amethyst, and a Glimpse of Nature. While he might be new to the channel, his commander certainly isn't, and Oliver's playing Derevi. He keeps a Mox Diamond, a Selesnya Signet, a Wooded Foothills, an Eternal Witness, a Counterspell, Basalt Monolith, and Misty Rainforest. I win the die roll and start us off. I play tap Scattered Groves and pass. Ariel plays a Forest and casts Elvish Mystic. Oliver plays a Misty Rainforest and casts Mox Diamond, discarding a Wooded Foothills as it comes in. Chris plays a Windswept Heath and casts his Mox Diamond, discarding a Stomping Grounds, and in terms of mana generation, I feel a bit left in the dust. I play a Forest and pass turn. Ariel plays a Thorn of Amethyst, and Oliver responds, losing 1 to the Misty Rainforest. Chris also does the same with his Windswept Heath, and Oliver finds a Hollowed Fountain, taking 2 to have it come in untapped. He then counters the artifact with a Counterspell. And before passing turn, Ariel plays a Dryad Arbor and passes. Oliver plays a Selesnya Signet and passes. Chris plays a Reflecting Pool, and he casts Farseek, passing while searching for a land. I play another Forest and cast Cultivate to find a Plains for the field and 1 for my hand. Ariel plays a Forest and casts a Heartwood Storyteller. He then swings the Mystic at Oliver for 1. Oliver plays a Forest and casts a Basalt Monolith. This triggers the Storyteller, letting Oliver's opponents draw a card. Chris plays a tap Blood Crypt, and he casts Jodah before passing to me. I play Sunpetal Grove as my land for turn, and pay 4 mana for a Return to Dust. I target Oliver's 2 mana rocks, which triggers the Heartwood Storyteller, and my opponents get to draw from it. Before letting this happen though, Oliver flashes in an Aven Mind Sensor, and the table then draws. Ariel plays a Forest and casts a Sylvan Library in his main phase. This triggers the Storyteller again, and the table, minus Ariel, draws a card. Heading to combat, the Storyteller goes at Oliver for 2, while the Dork and the Dryad Arbor head at me for 2 as well. Oliver plays a Windswept Heath, losing 1 life to find a Breeding Pool. He loses 2 to have it come in untapped, and he casts a Grim Monolith, and the Storyteller draws some of us cards. Oliver then casts Eternal Witness, returning the counterspell to hand. Moving to combat, the Aven Mind Sensor hits Ariel for 2. Chris casts Expropriate with Jodah's ability in his main phase, paying 1 of each color. And with the spell hitting the stack, the Storyteller triggers. We all draw a card, but sadly the only person who would have had a good response to this is tapped out, and the spell resolves. Chris takes the extra turn for his choice, while the rest of the table gives him a permanent. Before letting the spell resolve though, I use Swords to Plowshares on Jodah. And Chris then takes my Sunpetal Grove, Ariel's Forest, and Oliver's Breeding Pool. Chris then plays out a Noble Hierarch and passes to himself. On Chris's extra turn, he casts a Chromatic Lantern, which draws the table a card. He still has 7 mana remaining though, which just so happens to be enough for a Shouldered, which he casts, and Chris passes to me. I have nothing to sacrifice, and I play out of Plains. I cycle a Secluded Step, and then cast Panharmonicon, which hopefully has Ariel or Oliver drawing an answer for Chris's board. On Ariel's upkeep, he sacrifices the Storyteller to shield his trigger, not wanting to give Chris any more cards, and he then uses his library's ability. He takes 4 and puts one of the cards back, keeping 2. We see a Deserted Temple as his land for turn, and then an Alurin. I realize at this point I should be down to 7 cards, and I discard 2 lands. Ariel then casts Seton, and then Marwyn. He casts Llanowar Elves, which gives Marwyn a counter. And Ariel then taps Seton for 1 green, and he casts a Glimpse of Nature, regretting that he hadn't done it earlier. He's then able to cast a Duskwatch Recruiter for free because of Alurin, and draws from the Glimpse. Ariel then activates the Recruiter's ability by tapping 2 creatures to Seton's ability and a land, and he reveals a Hidden Herbalist. And then casts it, drawing a card, and gets 2 green because a permanent left the battlefield from the Revolt trigger. Ariel then plays out a Somberwall Sage, drawing again. And he then pays 2 for a Scroll Rack and activates it. He sets aside 6 cards and draws 6 cards, putting his original 6 on top. Ariel then casts a Summoner's Pact, but can only look at his top 4. He at least knows what's on top of his library and stacked it in such a way that he'd reveal a Woodland Bellower from it, and puts it to his hand and shuffles his deck. He then plays out a Boreal Druid, drawing a card from the Glimpse, and passes turn. At the end of Ariel's turn, Oliver brings in Derevi, who untaps the Grim Monolith. He's then able to flash in Mirror Entity, and then a Spellseeker because of Alurin. Thankfully, the Aven Mind Sensor doesn't stop him from searching, which is nice, and he goes to find a Swords to Plowshares. Oliver untaps and loses the Mirror Entity to Shoulder's trigger, and he then plays it on an island. He taps his Grim Monolith for a Mana Vault, having 2 floating colorless. Oliver then uses Swords on the Duskwatch Recruiter, which Ariel responds to by casting Heroic Intervention to protect. Oliver does have that counterspell he returned earlier, which he counters the intervention with. Heading to combat, Oliver then swings everything at the now open Ariel. Ariel takes the hit for 7, and Oliver untaps 4 permanents. Chris has no creatures to bring back with his Shoulder trigger, and he draws for turn. He then plays out a Mana Crypt and recasts Jodah. He's then able to pay 1 of each color mana thanks to Jodah to be able to cast Insurrection for only 5 mana. He does some quick math and realizes he has enough on the board to take out Ariel, and does so, and he gains a ton of untap triggers, basically untapping everything he owns. In his post-combat main phase, Chris then uses Jodah's alternate cost to cast a Runescar Demon for 5, and he goes to tutor for a card from his top 4. He then taps 5 more lands to play out a Myojin of Night's Reach, which comes in with a Divinity counter. Chris then wastes no time removing the counter so that Oliver and I discard our hands, and he then passes to me. I draw, play a Blighted Woodland, and pass. Oliver draws and casts his Soul Ring. He can't really swing at Chris, so he hits me for 5 in the air, getting 3 untap triggers. He untaps his Flyers and an island. Chris draws and casts Jin Gitaxias for 1 of each color. Heading to combat, he swings the Runescar Demon at Oliver, and Shieldred and the Myojin at me for 11. Oliver blocks while I take the hit, and Chris then passes, drawing from his Jin Gitaxias end of turn trigger. Chris then has to discard down to 7, and he passes to me. I draw for turn, and cast Greater Good, passing. At the end of my turn, Oliver brings in Derevi. Oliver draws and plays a Marsh Flats. He goes to combat, swinging Derevi at Chris, who blocks with Jodah. Oliver then passes, and at the end of turn, he remembers the shoulder trigger and bins the Spellseeker. On Chris's upkeep, Oliver brings back Derevi, tapping down the Rootscar Demon, while Chris brings back It That Betrays with his shoulder trigger. Chris then uses Jodah's alternate cost to cast Time Stretch, gaining 2 turns. He then casts Show and Tell for its normal cost, instead of paying 2 more for it, which is kinda weird, and he puts out Myojin of Seeing Winds. This sadly doesn't get a divinity counter, but not letting it slow him down, Chris then heads to combat, swinging everything he can at me for 20. And draws 7 at the end of turn thanks to Jin Kataxis, before discarding down to 7. He then moves to his first extra turn. Chris's next extra turn has him paying 5 for a Maelstrom Wanderer, and he gets 2 Cascades. He hits an Arcane Signet, and a Factor Fiction. I don't spend much time thinking about the pile, since I'm pretty sure we're dead at this point anyway, and Chris spends the same amount of time thinking about it as he grabs the pile of 3, cause 3 is bigger than 2. Chris then casts Brilliant Ultimatum, exiling his top 5. I make a 4-1 pile, and Chris takes the pile with Golos, and casts a legendary artifact. He can't really tutor reliably for a land, so he just skips it, and he moves to combat, taking me out with Jodah, and sending the rest at Oliver. Oliver has to resolve the Annihilator triggers first, and then blocks what he can, but still drops to 2. Chris then moves to his final extra turn, drawing 7 with Jin Kataxis at the end of his turn before discarding down to 7. Chris's turn is over quite quickly, as he casts Warning-Klex for the alternate cost, and then taps his other lands to cast both versions of Ulamog, before swinging everything at Oliver to close out the game. Game review time. I feel like I brought a spoon to a robot fight, and it didn't work out super well for me. I think I cast 3 spells this game? Whereas I think my opponents were casting about 3 a turn. Ariel's Seton deck went off on that one turn, and I really feel bad for him for not casting Glimpse of Nature early on. He would have been 3 cards deeper into his library had he tapped the Desert Temple and left a forest untapped for it. It was pretty crazy to see how much card draw a green deck was able to get, not to mention his mana ramp. I don't want to be dismissive of Oliver's deck, but it seemed like a typical Derevi one, playing a lot of Hate Bears, and using Derevi to come in for her cheaper cost to mess with opponents. And in a similar vein, Chris did the same thing with Jodah. He played a lot of great spells, and he was able to cast them for very little, or at least in comparison to what they'd normally cost. But please don't take this as criticism, because I enjoyed the games immensely that night, and they're all great guys, and we have a couple more from them in the future. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.